Ladies and gentlemen, Gregg.
Thank you. God, that was traumatizing to even watch. I'm triggered, okay? I'm so honored to be here. I am so honored to follow those incredible speakers, to have such an amazing introduction. I love New Orleans mayor. I want to move here now. My name's Gregg. I've been playing Phil Coulson in the Marvel Universe for the past decade, and as you've just seen, Phil's been through a lot. He's lost friends, lovers, limbs, and even his life several times. Once, he was even stabbed through the heart, then brought back to life using transplanted alien tissue while begging for death. All of that has left Phil with nightmares, insomnia, a robotic arm, and some big-time PTSD. So it's safe to say that Phil has some issues. And it's like that. I like that, because frankly, so do I. In order to function at the top of his game, Phil has to take the care and feeding of his battered psyche very seriously. And again, same. Because like Phil, I've survived my own personal traumatic adventures, just with fewer superpowered aliens. I mean, there were some there, but I think they weren't really there. And yet, somehow I find myself today happily married with a soulful, sassy teenage daughter who somehow is still willing to hang out with me, which is a superpower all unto itself. I owe all this to the fact, thank you. Teenagers, you have teenagers, you know. I owe all this to the fact that I am in long-term recovery for the addictions I once used to cope with anxiety and emotional issues. Like so many others, when I discarded those escapes, I discovered that I had no idea how to manage my newly clear and painfully present brain. Luckily for me, I belong to SAG-AFTRA, a union whose insurance plan covers mental health treatment. Not enough yet, but they cover it, which is good. So I found a great therapist and I went to work, and thank God I did, because the skills I learned in therapy made it possible to shoot 22 episodes in a row of a Marvel action series and still show up at home each night, calm, reasonably sane dad, instead of the traumatized, undead S.H.I.E.L.D. agent I had just spent the day portraying. As the first season wound down, I marveled at how effective my work had been and what a picture of mental health I'd become. And then I went on vacation. As I sat watching my wife and daughter play in the waves, my body began to vibrate with the kind of anxious adrenaline one normally associates with jumping out of an airplane at night, under fire, with a parachute that has not been fully assembled yet. I knew right away that something was very, very wrong, and no matter what I did to relax, the feelings only got worse. On the outside, I seemed almost normal, but inside, I began to drift further and further into a really terrifying dissociative state. This was very confusing for my family, but it was even more confusing for me. As soon as I got home, I reached out to my therapist. I saw doctors, a psychopharmacologist, and then, since I live in Los Angeles, I started checking out more unconventional healers. I was poked and prodded and chanted over. I went to an auricular acupuncturist who put so many tiny metal studs in my ears that I looked like an aging roadie on a Sex Pistols reunion tour. I thought it was kind of hot. My wife, not so much. But nothing I tried brought lasting relief. Finally, it was time to go back to work. I was terrified. I prayed they'd write a season where Coulson saved the world while appearing oddly intense and withdrawn. But no. As soon as we started shooting, however, the symptoms mysteriously disappeared, and life returned to something like normal. Until my next vacation. And there I was in another beautiful spot with my beautiful family, quietly losing my mind. And this continued for years. Okay, now, I'm comfortable with the fact that my personal brain can be a pretty strange and porous unicorn. But a deathly fear of vacations? That seemed a little out there, even for me. Finally, in desperation, I did what my wife would have done the very first day. I Googled it. I never learned. At first, nothing came up, but pretty soon I stumbled on an amazing book called The DARE Response for Treating Anxiety by a guy named Barry McDonough. The book perfectly described my symptoms and described the anxiety you can get over the fear of an anxiety attack, a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of panic, and helped me design personal CBT exposures, which instead of trying to push anxiety away, welcomed it as part of me, one that might facilitate deep personal growth. And I hated that. The last thing I wanted to do was welcome anxiety in. If I could have, I would have beaten anxiety to death with a rusty pipe. But I was at the end of my rope. So I sat down and I started doing these exposures. And to my shock, within hours, 8 hours in a row, I started to feel better. And within a couple of days, I got on a plane with my family, and soon we were all together swimming in the ocean. That was several years and many superb vacations ago. And though I still sometimes struggle with anxiety or even panic attacks, I'm not afraid of them. Because Mr. McDonough was right. They're part of me. And my journey to understand and manage my anxiety and panic has made me a deeper and more open person, one who manages my mental health the same way that I manage my physical health, with regular checkups and, when necessary, treatment and medication. And that's why I'm here today, and why I feel so honored to work with my friends at NAMI, because that simple philosophy changed my life. And though it's probably obvious to many of the people in this room, many people still consider it a radical idea. And that must change. I'm very lucky. I got the help I needed, and I was able to get my symptoms under control. But many people are less fortunate. Many of us have seen friends and loved ones become the victim of their conditions. Bless you. Lately, we've lost beloved public figures who seemed on the surface to be living such perfect lives, which makes this such an important moment, in my opinion, because mental illness thrives on shame, fear, and stigma, which keeps people suffering in silence. There has never been a greater weapon against that silence than the conversation that we've begun to have, and the way that it's getting louder with each passing day. Another reason I love NAMI is because they believe, as I do, that another important weapon in this fight is making affordable mental health care available to everyone. Because fortunate people like me, we're always going to find a way to get the help we need. Always. While the young, the poor, the uninsured, and even the undocumented often can't get that help, and in many cases, they need it more than anyone else. So I'd like to thank my friend Katrina Gay and everyone at NAMI for inviting me here to New Orleans. I don't know how to say it. I've heard like 3 already. New Orleans, New Orleans. New Orleans? Let me go walk around and have a few po' boys later, and I'll tell you how I think it should be said. But most of all, I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the chance to be seen. There's a great saying in recovery, you're only as sick as your secrets. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to be seen and to demolish some of my secrets and to strike my own small personal blow in the war against shame and stigma, a war that I know together we can win. Thank you. Oh, get out of here. you.